Hello, everyone. Welcome to Better Talks. I'm here with a special guest today. I'm going to allow him to introduce himself to you guys.
Hey, everybody. My name is Pete Romano. It's great to be here on Better Talks. And this recording was a long time in the making. And so I can't wait to speak more with you, Brahim, and learn more about what your audience is into. And, I think we'll have a great chat.
Awesome. Awesome. Can you kindly tell the audience what do you do? What type of business are you in?
Yes, of course. So, you know how small business owners, they work really hard, they struggle through things, they're putting in so many hours a day, sacrificing time away from their family, sacrificing time away from their pets and their hobbies. I always felt that that was almost unjust because when I came from corporate world, it seemed like such a comfortable existence. And when I transitioned into the small business world and saw how hard the small business owners worked, I just thought that that was a problem that I needed to fix. And
Hmm.
so I went about creating a piece of software that is intended to help make the job of business owners a lot easier by removing a ton of friction from their day-to-day processes and hopefully through that relieving hours and hours of time that they can reallocate back to the more important things in life.
Wow, that's really awesome because what I'm hearing from you is that you left the corporate world and because you saw a need in how small and medium-sized businesses go about doing their business. And now the question I have for you is that most small businesses or entrepreneurs, we see technology as destructive and disruptive. So, how can we change our view about technology and embrace it and utilize it to simplify our business operations and processes?
The Yeah, I it's certainly true that technology by definition is disruptive of a previous state of being. We've been seeing disruption. One of the things I love looking at is just how how up until maybe 400 years ago, the invention of the printing press, the progress of humanity was very, very small, very, very small, very, very small. And then all of a sudden, when mechanisms of sharing information, like the printing press, and then eventually that helped for a few hundred years, then radio, then television, now the internet, and then the smartphone. It doesn't just hockey stick. It's like an unbelievable change in how information is shared. And I left off there mass transportation and uh, the railroad, and then people getting onto bicycles and cars, and so the speed at which things happen when you give the human race the capability of just moving themselves faster, moving information faster, then it seems that the world just gets better and better, at least to many people. There's always naysayers on the other side, but I don't really see technology. I was never a person that's been scared of technology. I really embrace it. And so, um, for those that are in business, you're not going to lose out to technology, but you're going to lose out to another business who is using technology better.
Wow, interesting. Thanks for sharing that. My next question to you is that we have technology in terms of automation and artificial intelligence. So, how can businesses utilize their business functions, be it accounting, marketing, customer service, ensuring that there's automation and artificial intelligence?
Sure, I'll take on the automation part first, because you could almost think of artificial intelligence as a way is of automating something. And so, in any business, there's a lot of handoffs and there's a lot of roadblocks to getting things done. When you hire a company to do something, or when you buy something, like right here is a little clicker, and this little clicker turns on that lamp over there because I guess it was just easier than going over and turning the lamp ourselves, or even this, you go something much more. This is a smartphone, right? And so we buy those things because we don't personally know the process by which this thing can be made. Like, I don't know how to make this thing, so I can't make it. In fact, no individual. I remember reading an article that it would be impossible for an individual human to build their own toaster. Like, think about that. Like, think about how simple it is. But like, and I'm talking
Wow.
about, like, if you laid out all the parts in front of you, any person can
Mm,
probably follow an IKEA set of instructions to build. But I'm talking about mining the ore, cutting down the trees, building the little circuit boards, drilling for the oil that creates the plastic, that creates the shape. No individual human can create, or even a pencil. An individual human can't even create a pencil. And
mm,
so we go to businesses because if you're buying a widget, they know how to make the widget better than you can, and so they'll spend a lot more less time making the widget. You don't have to fly all over the world finding the parts for a toaster or a pencil. But the same thing can be said. You said accountants, right? And you said
yes.
market. And so why you go to an accountant because they know a process that you don't know, right? So if you knew the best way to do your taxes, if you knew the best way to do your marketing, you wouldn't have to hire the accountant. So you're buying their knowledge, you're buying their process knowledge. And so,
Mm,
but that process knowledge inherent in that process is a lot of friction, especially around. I love this topic of accountants, is that in order to do the service that you pay them for, the accountant has to come back at you, the customer, with a ton of questions. And you need to answer those questions honestly, and you have to know the answers to those questions, and you have to sometimes provide a lot of paperwork, documents, and sometimes those documents are not really right here at your disposal the way that this clicker thing is. And so you have to fetch those. And so, from the perspective of the business owner, that's a lot of high friction. Like, all you want to do is finish this tax return, but you have this customer who's scrambling, acting as their own roadblock to finishing this service that you bought. And so the tool that we created was there. We invented it because we identified these pain points, and we said, well, what if the accountant didn't need to get all of those answers to those questions? What if the accountant could offload all of that requesting and following up with the customer, and did you send me this? Yeah, I didn't get this. And if they could offload that to a piece of technology that we built, then the business owner can stay focused on the intellectual task of doing the actual tax return instead of having to do a lot of clerical follow-up work.
mm,
And so that's
yeah.
what our tool does, is that you launch a tax return job, and the tool does all of the following up with the customer to retrieve this and retrieve that and retrieve this
Wow.
and bring it back into a portal where the tax professional can handle all of those various things.
Thank you, Peter, because like you said, the technology is a tool that simplify the work tax rather than you doing pretty much everything. You just focus on what is essential, what is very, very vital, and then leave the rest to the processes to handle that and makes life easier for both parties. Now, my question to you is that creativity and technology, because I see most of the technologies that we have, especially Apple products, they look very nice. They are very user friendly in terms of the design. It's simple, it's beautiful. Most times there's some old legacy technologies, the interface looks very ugly. The color scheme is whack. So, how important is creativity, the presentation of technology in a business?
Yeah, well, you're making some great points. The Apple does certainly excel at the presentation of computer products and high tech products, and we um, God, I mean, you could do a whole college course on what you just asked. The like think back to I imagine the ideas when I imagine Steve Jobs when cell phones were first introduced, and you have these things in your hand, and I imagine I don't know this for sure, but I could just imagine Steve Jobs having his first cell phone and just looking at it, knowing that he was so aesthetically minded. You watch some of those old movies and you read about him, and fonts were so important to him. And there's that famous scene from his movie where he fired one of the staff members because they were questioning the computer's need to handle a wide variety of fonts. And he knew that in his bones that aesthetics were so important to the overall
Mm,
experience. And so I imagine him holding this phone and just thinking to himself, like, God, this is just an ugly piece of garbage. But it was what they had. And I imagine that he really set himself to this challenge. And I can't really say when, but at some point in time, he said, well, I'm going to make something totally different, and I'm going to reimagine what this looks like. And so now we have these beautiful iPhones, and then the Androids and all that came after. And so um, it takes a lot of cleverness and ingenuity and creativity, to your point, to make things easier and to make things easy in general. It takes a lot of brainstorming to make a
mm,
process easy. It's very hard to make things easy. Even before
mm,
we jumped on this talk, I was sitting here wireframing the third iteration of our software. And I just know that I have to look at all of my assumptions and
mm,
understand, you know, any points of friction. I need to saw those off, or I need to sand those down, and I need to finesse these things. And always, you remember in algebra, what did they used to call that? The lowest common denominator, right? Like in order to take, you don't present a fraction as 12 over 6 or 6 over 12. You present that as 1 over 2, right? And so you're
yeah.
always boiling things down to their essence. And I think that that's what Steve Jobs would have probably agreed with this sentiment, and others, product developers, is that you have to, in a mobile device and a piece of software, in an idea that you're conveying to an audience, you need to get at its essence and leave all of the fat only for when that fat is absolutely necessary to settle. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. My question to you is, with regards to your company, what functions and value does your software program brings to businesses? I'm just curious to know.
Well, if any of that pain and friction, if there's an accountant out there that's tired of following up with their customers, if there's a lawyer out there who wants a more streamlined process, we've had people say that we've gotten their quote making from an hour and a half of time per quote to 10 minutes per
Mm,
quote. That's a pretty significant time savings. And if you have
mm,
30 salespeople, you could imagine that every week you're saving probably 40 hours of nonsense of that can be reallocated. And so if you're a business owner out there who values the amount of time that your staff is spending, then that's why you would come to the software.
So, do you have templates? Do you have like templates that people can utilize in your software?
Yeah. So again, you're asking about what makes something. easy to run. And so, in order to make something easier, you can't put the intellectual uh, requirements onto the user of the software to have to build out all of their own processes.
Mm,
The more that you
yeah.
can do the heavy lifting
Yeah.
for them, the better off they're going to be,
Mm.
because they
That's
just won't do it. Because it's like, um, you go out to a restaurant, you don't want to cook your own meal. Well, if you wanted to cook your own meal, you'd go into the kitchen,
mm,
right?
yeah. I really like that analogy of how technology is. You have the back end, you have the front end. So the back end is where all the heavy duty, all the work gets done. Customers don't really see the back end at all. And then the front end is where pretty much um, it becomes user friendly. You know, it just clicks and buttons. And I'm always curious to understand why at the back end, that's where all the coding is. That's where all the design is, and then the front end looks completely different.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're truly living in the matrix. There's just code and algorithms and things just happening everywhere we go. Even if you just walk with your phone in your pocket, it's calculating something, it's algorithming something. You dial, you open your computer, it's tracking something. You move your mouse, it's tracking something. And so there's things happening in the background that you don't even know about. And that and it's not just
Yeah,
computer programming. I was speaking to a branding expert just recently, and just on the topic of thought leadership and the value of putting out thought leadership pieces on the internet and videos. And just, his reaction was, hey, it's a slow burn. And what you don't even know what kind of chatter is going on in the background. People are talking
mm,
about you when you don't even know it. And
mm.
so that's always interesting to think about.
Wow, wow. So do you think AI is going to replace all the groundwork that the end user doesn't see?
um It's there. Who was it? The CEO of Nvidia recently came out and said that, don't bother learning how to code. Uh, there's, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm optimistic,
Mm,
um, but it certainly is taking over lots of aspects of things that people did. People were required to do these certain things, and now they're not required to do certain things.
mm,
Um, what I get worried about is the feedback loop of of AI, where AI content just gets refed back into itself. It's almost like,
mm,
when cousins or sisters or brothers and sisters like get together, and we frown upon that because there's not enough difference in the output, the outcome of that kind of relationship. And so there's been a lot of talk about, okay, well, if everybody starts using AI content to put out uh, pieces on the internet, blogs and email, and if everything's just filled with AI, well, then AI is going to stop learning from original content. And so then,
mm.
and I don't purport to be an absolute AI expert at all. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's other guests that you can have, but just, from what I'm reading, the I think about things like that, where um, the like I said, AI just regenerating upon itself. The outputs, they've called it model collapse. I think is the phrase that they've used. That the whole thing just collapses from a lack of original content. But what? How do you define original content? Upon reading an AI outputted paragraph to a human, it looks relatively original, but my understanding is that it's picking the most common next kind of word to figure out the next and the next and the next. And so AI can maybe detect its own outputs, but other things that do bother me are, for example, the artists among us who have spent their years honing a craft of graphic design
Mm,
or painting
yeah,
or
yeah.
music, and the AI
Mm,
models have just been basically trained on people's art, and now they just output regurgitations of other people's art. And as an
mm,
artist myself, that can be
yeah.
rather offensive and almost like a helpless situation, because who are
Mm,
you going to shake your fist at to so you see lawsuits happening from the New York
yeah.
Times and other kinds of publications, and
Wow.
I guess the courts will figure that stuff out, and hopefully for the better.
See, speaking of creativity, we live in a content creation world where I realize that most businesses don't know the importance of content creation. Can you share with the audience what is content creation? Is content creation just a graphic design or a post that you just post on social media? That's it, or there's so much to it to make it connecting, to make it communicating to the audience.
Yeah. So if the question is for business owners who haven't begun to engage in just this idea of content creation, well, there's so many different. I think that it's just another form of communication, right?
Mm,
And so um, people buy from those that they know, like, and trust. And so um, one way to gain that likeness and knowledge and trust is to put yourself out there, because if you're in business, you're an expert at something.
yeah.
And if you're not an expert at something, then you shouldn't really be in business. And so there, and if you have customers, then chances are they're not only interested in buying your product, but they're also interested in, let's call it, topic adjacent types of topics. So
Mm,
if you're a small business owner, let's say you run a bakery, like any typical small business, a bakery, for example. So people want to buy your cakes, they want to buy your muffins, they want to do that, but they would probably be also interested in how you source your flour, or your thoughts on the flour, or they might be interested in the proportions of flour to sugar, or why you use one type of egg in your batter over another type of egg, and
mm,
so they're probably interested in hearing why is the oven set to 450 degrees and not 400 degrees, or what
mm,
happens if why you might want to set it to 400 degrees and maybe have it bake longer than. And so there's probably an endless amount of interesting and engaging pieces
mm,
of content that you can discuss. Now it becomes the mechanics of communicating that information. How do you communicate? Well, you can communicate that information in an email. You can communicate that in a video. You can communicate that on TikTok. You can communicate that on a blog. You can communicate that on a live webinar. You can communicate that on just some of these audio based channels. And so there's an endless way to mechanically communicate this information if you just are comfortable discussing various topics related to what it is that you're an expert on.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Peter. My last question to you is what is your final word for young entrepreneurs who are looking to start their own business but they're afraid?
Sure. So, one of my favorite topics is customer journey imagination, and building customer journeys. And what I mean by that is, no matter what business you're in, just take a
Mm,
pause from what it is that you're doing in an afternoon and get out a piece of paper or go to your whiteboard and map out every single step that happens before a customer knows about who you are, what you do,
Mm,
and map out every possible thing that happens all the way through them being a passionate advocate of your business. And when I say map out everything, I mean, uh, where do they first learn about your problem? Where do they first learn about you as a solution? When do
mm,
they first meet you? What happens during that meeting? What direction do they go in after that meeting? Do they buy or do they not buy? If they don't buy, what happens? What are you going to do? If they do buy, well, what do you do? And how do you do it? How do you deliver that? What are all of the steps in that process? And then when you complete the job, how does it happen? And so you and if you start to really dig down deep, then this is not just a couple of little scribbles on a piece of paper. This becomes a very deep analysis of all of the steps of your business. And so
mm.
um, that would be my advice to anybody who wants to start to really focus on how to grow. Because once you map that out, you're
Mm.
mapping out the journey of one customer. But now what you have is the blueprint for how multiple customers stack up. And
Interesting.
so that I find to be one of the best exercises that one can do.
Customer journey. This is the first time. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Mr. Pitt, for sharing that profound insight. So, how can the audience reach out to you if, in case they want to know more about what you do, your service, your software?
Sure. Just visit segwik.com, segwik.com, or find me on LinkedIn. Just drop a note that you heard from us from Better Talks, and we'd be happy to chat with you.